If you, like me, have just bonked, hit the wall, run out of energy, you've come in from the wilds to a petrol station to refuel and get some food back on board, then stop right there because you want to watch this video first. I'm very lucky to have Andy here, who's the founder of Precision Fuel and Hydration, and he is going to talk me through what I have done plenty of times before. I've blown on a ride, I've rocked up to a petrol station, and as a 6'8" giant, I've absolutely rinsed the place. Probably not in the best way possible and not to my advantage. So I'm happy to have you here, Andy. Talk me through what I should do when I hit death's door.
Yeah, we've all done it many times. If you've ever, if you've been out on a long ride, you've either not taken enough, you've dropped your nutrition. Petrol station is open all hours, so they're there to help you out. If you pick the right things as well, you can get yourself back in business pretty quickly, but you do need to know what you're looking at, what's in all the different products. And I suppose the best place to start is when you're exercising, you need three things. You need carbs and for energy, you need fluids, and you might need salts as well for your hydration. And you can get all of those things in different amounts from different products, but you've got to first of all know what it is your body needs at that moment in time. So I think the first thing to do when you pull up at the petrol station is stop feeling sorry for yourself and have a bit of a self-analysis about how do I feel? Have I got a hunger flat? Am I totally blown? Have I run out of energy? You'll know that feeling because you'll probably be craving sweets and chocolate and those kind of things, and that guides you to the fact that what you're trying to get in is carbs. It might be that you're dying of thirst or you're cramping up and you feel parched and it's hydration that you're after. So figuring that out is the first step.
That's interesting because I always just go straight through those doors and I'm just going for what I want to eat and I'm just getting it into my pockets and absolutely smashing it and feeling sorry for myself on the pavement.
To be fair, going for what you want is not always a bad strategy because your body is pretty adept at telling you what it needs, but I think it is worth just reflecting on that and trying to be a little bit strategic about what you buy, because there's sort of competing demands here. Are you going to stop and eat all of this stuff like there and then just carry on if you've not got far to go, or have you got to fill your pockets with stuff that's going to be durable enough and you've got to work out how much energy you need to go another 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever. So they're all the questions to get sort of straight.
Okay, well let's start with energy. Yeah. I want energy, I've run out, what should I eat to replace all that lost fuel that I'm going to need to keep on riding?
Well, most riders will know from past experience, you don't always have to eat your energy actually. One of the best things you can do for energy is grab a good old Coca-Cola because it is mainly sugar. You get a little bit of caffeine in there as well, and you get some fluids. So kind of as an all-in-one solution, a liquid gets absorbed really quickly, the sugar gets into your bloodstream, and one of these, you can feel one of these hitting your system within 10 minutes. So it will make you feel better. I would say one of the potential downsides though is the fizz. It can make you feel quite bloated and gassy, and so maybe you won't want to just neck half a litre like that all in one go.
So if I'd have prepared properly though, I hadn't set out the door really fast and forgotten all my nutrition, what would a Coke actually be equivalent to some of the products that you're able to provide?
So a Coca-Cola is probably about a 10-11% carbohydrate solution, which means for every 100 millilitres you're going to get about 10-11 grams of sugar. That's about twice the strength actually of a normal carbohydrate energy drink. The good thing about that is it's giving you more energy more quickly. The downside is it's kind of, as you know, it's syrupy and it's not going to hydrate you as well. So you might actually take your Coca-Cola, and if you can do it, cut it half and half with water, and that's going to be way closer to being like a sports drink sort of. Osmolality is the technical word. It just means the thickness of the drink. It makes it easier to absorb.
That's a good tip. So if you have 2 bottles, Coke, half Coke in either, and top it up with water.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interestingly as well with Coke, people think they're going to get a good caffeine hit because Coke's got caffeine in it, but really there's less than half of the caffeine you'd get in a regular caffeine gel in a whole bottle of Coke. So if you think you need caffeine, Coke is going to give you a little bit, but it's not really going to give you as much as most people think.
Interesting. That's always my go-to when I'm stuck without my coffees, because I have a terror without coffee. Let's talk Jelly Babies and Haribos. I mean, these are a staple of any cyclist really, when they're out on the road. I'm taking it these are a good example.
Definitely. Haribo have saved my backside many times, and Jelly Babies, Haribo, if you think about one sweet, they're all a bit different sizes, but if you had 5, 6, 7 of those in your hand, that's probably going to be about 30 grams of carbs, which is about the same as an energy gel. So one of those bags has probably got 120, 130 grams of carbohydrate in it. So if you had to go on and ride another 2 hours from where you are now, that's one of those bags is going to give you 60 grams of carbs an hour. And the great thing is, obviously, they're really durable. The packet is waterproof. You stick it in your back pocket. You can just nibble on them as you get going. And so they're a great substitute for gels when you're on the move.
So good shout.
Yeah.
They're the first port of call, then straight into the sweet counter. I've got some sandwiches here. Now, personally, I'd always go for a sandwich. I think I quite like, my favourite would be, so when I was in the Italian mountains, I'd go for kind of like a proper piadina, proper cheese, grilled, toasted sandwich. Is that a good thing? I'm hoping these are a good example. Please don't tell me they're not.
Yeah, they could be in a lot of circumstances, and better than a lot of people think, and maybe not for the reason that you think, because the sandwiches typically contain quite a lot of salt. And this, I think a BLT is going to have 500 milligrams of sodium in a sandwich like that. The bread is probably going to be 50 grams of carbohydrate. So that's almost the same as 2 energy gels and 1 strong hydration tablet all in one go. So if you bought a BLT and a bottle of water, or a grilled cheese and a bottle of water, that's actually going to tick quite a few boxes for you. People might think going for crisps is a good idea if you want salt.
Yeah, because I would crave, that's the thing, when you're craving salt, you look at the crisps, I want a few crisps. So
yeah, but the amount of sodium you get in those is actually relatively low. It's quite a bit lower because the serving size is quite small and they're quite fatty and oily. They're not always the best substitute. So, I mean, if you fancy the taste of something salty, go for it. If you can, find some pretzels. They tend to have the salt, the little salt crystals on the outside, and they pack a bit more salt than crisps do in most cases.
Okay, but if you want to really pack your salt in, salty sandwiches, cheese toasty, way to go. Really interesting. I'm glad about that because I would not like to go without the cheese toasties. Yeah. What about the staples though? We've got Mars bars, Snickers, chocolate bars, bananas. What are these sort of things equivalent to in terms of a proper kind of energy gel?
Yeah, so one of these kind of, like if you get a Mars bar, a Snickers bar, or a Boost bar, very roughly, they're probably going to give you a similar amount of energy in carbohydrate terms to a large energy gel. So you're going to need sort of 1, 2, even 3 of those per hour if you're working really, really hard. Now, the problem with having 1 of them is fine, but you start eating 2 or 3 of those, you're going to feel quite icky inside because they're quite high fat. They're going to take a time to digest. So maybe smashing 1 of them, from a morale booster is good. But they're also going to melt. So if you stick them in your pockets and ride off, in all but the coldest day, you're going to end up with a kind of gooey, sticky mess to deal with.
So comparing them to a gel is going to be easier to digest.
Yeah.
If you're smashing through the bars, that's potentially going to add that sort of nauseating feeling as the ride progresses.
I would say so. Although I've got to say, for me personally, it's a shout out for Boost bars that have really saved my backside a couple of times.
Okay, so they're a good one to kind of whack in. One off, get things going again, but to rely on them for the whole ride is probably a bit of a no-no.
It's not going to really work. And bananas, again, you can probably pick up a banana. A decent-sized banana is going to give you a similar amount of carbs, maybe a little bit less, but and a healthier alternative for sure. They come in their own packaging that's waterproof, and you can take it with you on the ride. Yeah. The downside of bananas is, again, a bit like the chocolate bars, but for a different reason. They're quite bulky, they're quite fibrous. You're not going to want to eat 3 or 4 bananas, to get a lot of energy. So maybe that's one part of it, mixed up with a few Haribo or Jelly Babies, and that's gonna get you going.
Okay, so I've got a good idea now. I'm walking into my petrol station, I'm having my BLT. As I'm walking, I'm paying at the counter. Then I'm getting a chocolate bar for a bit of a morale boost. I'm definitely getting my gummy bears. They're going in the pocket. I'm going to start nibbling on them as I begin my ride. And I'm also necking a Coke just out the door, maybe getting another one to put in the biddens. So energy, I'm pretty much sorted there. That's a good strategy. Let's move on to hydration now, though, because that is obviously a big one. Yeah. And I've had a sweat test with you. I know I'm quite a salty sweater myself, so it's something I need to keep on top of. Where are we going with hydration?
You can probably just, if there's some nice kind people at the petrol station, they might just top your water bottle up as well. So fluid-wise, you can always just go back to good old water. As long as you're getting a bit of salt from the food, you'll be all good there.
Okay, so you can just go for the water and keep things topped up with the salty food. What about things like, we've got a milkshake here, we've got a Lucozade sort of
Yeah, like regular sports drinks, they're actually not as high in electrolytes as you'd think and are quite sugary. So they're a good alternative. That's like 6% carbohydrate, about 500 milligrams of sodium a litre. They're obviously designed for that purpose, so they can be pretty good. Milkshakes, they might... Some people will like them, some people won't. But what people probably don't realise is there's usually a decent amount of electrolytes in there. They can hydrate you pretty well, and they'll have quite a bit of sugars. So in some ways, you could almost compare these, not exactly like for like, but they're not so far apart as you'd imagine. So if you fancy one of these and you're okay with lactose, then don't stop yourself having a milkshake. It could work.
Okay, so water, first port of call. Look to the milkshake counter, see what's going. I like these because they're quite refreshing when you've been having a lot of sugary items. I find it does provide that change that's needed, even for a bit of morale.
Yeah.
Nice one. So I'm heading out the door fully hydrated.
Yeah, going for it. To be back home in no time.
Well, Andy, there's always certain items when you do walk into these places at the roadside where you're like, oh, I see that, I want that.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling there's certain items you should avoid really in these situations too.
Yeah, although I mean you're in survival mode, so probably if it's good for your morale, nothing should be totally off limits. But there are a few things like you might fancy something savoury like some cheese.
I'd like that. I'm a big cheese fan, so I would go for some cheese.
And it's probably the salt in it that you're craving, but that's basically just sort of fat, protein, sodium. It's not going to do anything else for you, and it's going to slow your digestion down. It might make you feel a little bit sick. So that's perhaps one to steer away from.
Okay.
The other thing I would say potentially is just like anything that's kind of badged up as being diet or low calorie or whatever, because those things are bulked out to be more filling, but actually deliver less calories, because they're for people who don't want to take on as much energy. You actually, in this situation, want to take on as much energy as you can in the densest possible format. So kind of diet variants or low sugar, low fat, they're not going to be the ones to go for.
Okay, what about the salted nuts? Because I'm thinking that's going to have a good amount of sodium in. It's going to replace those lost electrolytes when I'm sweating. Good thing?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? Because they taste really salty, but nuts are quite high in fat. They're also not as salty as you'd think. You're going to get less per unit volume. You're going to get less salt in those than you even are in the crisps. So they're getting nowhere near replacing. You'd have to eat so many nuts to get your salt in that potentially not really worth it. And it's just going to, fill your stomach up, and you're not going to feel good off it.
Just fill yourself up with a load of nuts. You don't pour nuts into your car. What about the ice lolly? Because I'm a big fan of ice lollies, especially in the heat.
Yeah, definitely.
Good way of cooling yourself down. I'm hoping this is another good point.
It is, yeah. I reckon if an ice lolly, so in one of these kind of ice pop things, you're going to get 20 or 30 grams of carbohydrates in one of those for a start, in the sugars. You're going to get lots of liquid and fluid, and it's going to help cool you down. So in the heat, go for it.
So you want to go for kind of an ice kind of proper lolly, not an ice
rather than
cream.
an ice cream, I'd say, because the dairy and all the other stuff is not going to be helpful. But an ice lolly, quench your thirst a little bit. Again, great morale booster when it's on a hot day.
What about when it's really hot, you're really looking to get that sodium in? What's the best sort of thing to go for to really up your salt content? Controversially,
I'd say it might be the student's favourite, the pot noodle. If you can get some hot water, you might have to bargain with the people at the petrol station to get that. But one of those, believe it or not, has about 900 milligrams of sodium in it, so nearly a gram of sodium, which is as much as in 2 really strong electrolyte tablets.
Wow.
They taste salty and satisfying. You can get 70 grams of carbs in there as well. So if you were feeling like pretty wasted, a bit crampy, that kind of thing, having one of those and pairing it with a bottle of water to dilute it all down a little bit is going to be, it's going to get you out of jail on a hot day.
That's a lot of stuff. That's good then, because I basically lived off these when I rode through the Gobi Desert last year, and it proved great. But at the same time, this is a good example of something that's quite hard to get into you when you're riding. You need boiling water. I've actually taken these bike packing before. It's split in my bag, and the stuff just went everywhere. It was an absolute nightmare. My bag still smelled of pot noodle 3 years later. So that, for me, is a good example why sports nutrition is the way to go if you can plan it in advance. It's easy to carry, it's easy to digest, it fits in your pockets perfectly, it doesn't spill all over your bags and make you smell like pot noodle.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's no magic in sports nutrition. It's metered out doses of carbs, salts, fluids in a convenient way, in a palatable way that you can carry, that you know what numbers you're hitting. It's also made to be as digestible as possible. There's no extra fibre, there's not a lot of fat in there, or virtually there's no fat in there. So it's very quick and easy to digest. So yeah, definitely that's the preferred option when you can. But if you do get stuck, there are plenty of ways to kind of dig yourself out of a hole.
Well, thanks so much, Andy, for coming over and giving us some advice. I'm definitely taking this with me next time I stop at the side of the road in a bad way, which is probably going to happen a few more times in my life on the bike. Let us know in the comment section down below what you like to go for when you're kind of starting to suffer out on the bike and you're ready to shop and pay. Remember, pay people. I'm not responsible for any unpaid bills. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for joining us. If you found this video useful, please give it a big thumbs up. I'll see you on the next one.